Circleville, Ohio, was the quintessential small town, nestled quietly between Columbus and Chillicothe. It was a place where everyone knew each other. The town was peaceful, the streets quiet, and the annual Pumpkin Festival was the highlight of the year. The festival brought the community together, where families, neighbors, and friends would celebrate the harvest season with a parade, rides, and delicious pumpkin-based treats. However, in the late 1970s, Circleville would no longer be remembered for its pumpkin pies or autumn festivities. Instead, it became infamous for a series of chilling, anonymous poison pen letters that set off a chain of events that would destroy lives and leave an indelible scar on the town's history. The start of something sinister. In 1976, the first of the Circleville letters arrived. At first, they were merely odd. Someone in the community had taken it upon themselves to send anonymous letters filled with shocking, personal accusations. The letters were typed in block letters, an attempt to conceal the writer's identity. They came from Columbus, Ohio, but contained very specific details about the private lives of the townspeople. The content of these letters was not just hurtful, but deeply unsettling. They exposed intimate secrets, family scandals, and accusations of infidelity, corruption, and even crimes such as murder and false imprisonment. The letters were designed to instill fear. The writer claimed to have been watching the recipients, revealing details only someone close to them could possibly know. Circleville, once a tight-knit community, quickly became a town gripped by suspicion. No one knew who the writer was, and no one could predict who would be next. Over the course of several years, more than 1,000 letters would be sent. The letters targeted ordinary citizens, public officials, and even media outlets, all postmarked from Columbus. The letters became a source of growing anxiety for the townspeople, as they never knew when or who the next victim would be. It wasn't long before the situation took a darker turn. The poison pen letters didn't just expose secrets anymore. They began to incite threats and demands. The target, Mary Gillespie. Though many received the mysterious letters, one woman seemed to be the primary target, Mary Gillespie. Mary was a school bus driver in Circleville. She was married to Ron Gillespie, and together they had 2 children. One day, Mary received a letter accusing her of having an affair with the local school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The letter made it clear that the writer had been watching her home and knew the details of her family. Mary was initially terrified, but chose to keep the letters to herself. The writer escalated, however, sending a second letter, this time to Ron Gillespie, her husband. The letter accused Mary of infidelity and urged Ron to catch them together and kill them both, suggesting that Gordon Massey didn't deserve to live. This letter not only shattered Mary's peace of mind, but also shook her marriage to its core. The threats didn't stop there. The writer sent another letter to Ron, warning him that if he didn't take action, the affair would be exposed publicly. The letter threatened to broadcast the scandal on CBS, complete with posters, signs, and billboards throughout the town. But Mary remained adamant that the affair was a fabrication, though she feared for her family's safety. As the weeks passed, more letters began to arrive, targeting more people. The vice principal at the school received a letter detailing Mary's school bus driver ID number, further proof that the writer had inside knowledge of the school system. Gordon Massey, the superintendent, was also sent threats. with warnings that his car tires would be slashed and his brakes cut if he didn't stop seeing Mary. The situation began to feel like a nightmare that they couldn't wake up from. Ron and Mary confided in Ron's sister, Karen, and her husband, Paul Freshour. Paul, a former prison guard who had survived a hostage situation during a prison riot, suggested confronting the person they suspected might be responsible for the letters. David Longberry, a fellow bus driver who had previously made unwanted advances toward Mary. In an attempt to put an end to the harassment, Paul wrote an anonymous letter to Longberry, warning him to stop. For a short time, the letters seemed to stop arriving, but this brief respite was only the calm before the storm, escalation, and the first death. As the months passed, the letters began again. This time, the writer took it even further. Signs began to appear all over town, accusing Gordon Massey of being involved with Mary's 12-year-old daughter, Tracy. Ron Gillespie became obsessed with tearing these signs down before Tracy could see them. It was a futile task. Everywhere he turned, there seemed to be more signs. Frustrated and scared, Ron and Mary took the issue to the sheriff. An investigation began, with houses being watched, phones tapped, and even the U.S. Postal Service involved in an effort to track down the letter's source. But no progress was made. The harassment continued relentlessly. Then, on the evening of August 19th, 1977, everything changed. Ron Gillespie received a phone call from the mysterious writer, who claimed to have been watching their house. Enraged and desperate, Ron grabbed his .22 caliber revolver and left his home, telling his daughter that he knew who was responsible for the letters and was going to confront them. Later that night, Ron's truck was found crashed into a tree. He was dead, having suffered fatal internal injuries. Strangely, his gun had been fired once, but no bullet or casing was found. What was even more shocking was the discovery that Ron's blood alcohol level was double the legal limit. Despite the fact that friends and family testified that he wasn't a heavy drinker, the sheriff ruled his death a drunk driving accident. But many people, including Paul Freshour, believed that Ron had been murdered. Paul suspected that Ron had fired his gun in an attempt to defend himself. Mary was in Florida visiting family when Ron died, trying to escape the mounting stress. But when she returned to Circleville, the poison pen letters didn't stop. In fact, they only grew more sinister. The writer taunted her and Gordon, accusing them of murder and threatening to expose more secrets. The trap and the arrest. In 1979, Gordon Massey officially started dating Mary, and they both faced even more public scrutiny. But the letters kept coming, relentlessly accusing them of a scandalous affair. Then, in February 1983, 6 years after Ron's death, Mary experienced something terrifying. While driving her bus, she saw a sign about her daughter near a fence. She stopped to tear it down, only to discover that the sign was a booby trap, rigged with a gun meant to fire when the sign was pulled. The police traced the gun, despite the serial number being filed off. Shockingly, the weapon was registered to none other than Paul Freshour. This revelation stunned the town. Paul had always been friendly with Mary and her family, even after his divorce from Karen. Why would he go to such extreme lengths to harm her and her loved ones? Paul denied any involvement in the trap, insisting he had no idea how the gun had ended up in such a dangerous position. But the evidence against him was damning. Police discovered that Paul had purchased a similar gun years earlier. He had taken the day off work on the very day the trap had been found. The box that held the gun had been traced to Paul's workplace. Most damning of all, handwriting experts claimed that Paul's writing matched that of the Circleville letters. Paul stuck to his story, claiming that the sheriff had coerced him into writing letters for comparison during the investigation. As for the gun, Paul admitted to owning one similar to the trap gun, but claimed that it had been stolen, although he had never reported the theft. Despite his claims of innocence, Paul failed a polygraph test. In March 1983, he was indicted for attempted murder, and his trial took place later that year. His ex-wife, Karen, testified against him, claiming that Paul had written the letters and was angry at Mary for betraying Ron. Within a week, the jury found Paul guilty, and he was sentenced to prison for his involvement in the terrifying conspiracy. The aftermath. The Circleville letters left an indelible mark on the town. While Paul Freshour was convicted, many questions remain unanswered. Was he truly the person behind the letters? Or was he a scapegoat for a larger, more mysterious conspiracy? The town of Circleville would never be the same after the letters began to appear, and the pain of the events would linger for decades. Some believe that the true identity of the writer was never fully discovered, leaving an air of mystery and suspicion that would never quite fade. The town's once idyllic reputation had been tarnished by the horrific events, and the legacy of the Circleville letters would haunt the people who lived through it for years to come.